you have triggers for yourself that you recognize as shit? I'm a bit off kilter. Like for me, as soon as my sleep gets messed up and I start waking up in the night with my head real busy, thinking about problems, as soon as my sleep goes, I'm like, massive red flag. You need to do something.
Like everyone, I haven't nailed it. But but yeah, I need to exercise like every other day, probably. I'd love to do it every day if I could, but
you and I have talked about this previously. I remember actually.
It's something that I can feel myself getting a little bit pent up and a bit frustrated and a bit short and a bit anxious, and I know that if I exercise a little bit, that'll really help. And I also realized probably more in the last 2 or 3 years just how much I really like community stuff, whether it's taking my kids' footy team, whether it's going down to the local rugby club and watching a game in the afternoon. I find I always try and involve myself in one thing every year, whether it's helping coach a sports team, or whether it's helping organise a fundraiser separate of Movember. I always try and be involved in sort of 1 or 2 things a year. And I just find, even though, it's that double-edged sword, mate, where you're like, have I got time to do this? But you just prioritise it. You actually, because I know it makes me feel good.
That's really good. Bloody good on you. I think, and I love it. Kind of dovetails with some of the stuff you've talked about before about making connections, because it's about you connecting with your community and other people, and I think knowing the things that make you feel good and doing something about them. Like, I think that's a wonderful piece of advice for all of us, and not to feel guilty about it.
No, not at all. And there's heaps and heaps of research around. We're working as much as we ever have, as fathers anyway, and as dads, we're actually spending as much or more time with our children than we ever have. So like, if you put those two things together, the things that are actually missing out because of that is volunteering at different things. Like, something's got to give when you're working more than ever, spending more time with your family than ever, which a lot of people don't think is happening, but it is. So something's got to give, and that's the kind of community volunteering side of things is perhaps one of the parts of that is that's dropping off. So it's if you can, to the point we made earlier, got to make sure your house is in order.
Hey, Rob, thanks heaps for that. That's really, really useful advice, mate. Really enjoy that.